Hey guys, so the title of this video is going to be building a competitive army. Now, the concept of this video probably seems a lot more simple than it sounds, but in actual fact and in retrospect, building a strong, we'll say all-comers army can be quite difficult, particularly with the drop of 6th edition. A lot of codexes have been left way behind in terms of anti-flyer, in terms of strong shooting abilities, which is where 6th edition's gone. I'm just getting a zone probe if you guys are wondering. Yeah, so there's a few codexes out there that are really lacking in the components needed for a competitive 6th edition army. There's really only one codex that's superb at the moment. There's a few that got a little bit better, a few that got a little bit worse. Most stayed the same, but on the whole, a lot of codex are struggling in certain areas. So we'll jump straight into this and sort of how I approach building an army. Now, normally when I sit down with the codex and I want to start a new army, or I want to change up my Tyranids or change up my Blood Angels, and I want to try something different, first thing you need to think about is, what am I going to face on the table? Because when people have sent me messages in the past asking for sort of advice on units, advice on army lists, advice on this, advice on that, and other people have been asked the same questions, and it's a difficult question to answer because everyone's meta, everyone's gaming area is different. Now, I don't want to try and blow my own trumpet, but where I currently game in Nottingham is where Warhammer World is, and that's my local store, and it's also my new place of work. Maybe a video coming up on that later on, but yes, I do work at Warhammer World now. But Warhammer World, in its nature, being in Warhammer World, attracts some of, if not the best gamers in the country. I know several of my regular opponents week in, week out are ranked in the top 5 in terms of the indie tournaments in the UK. So first of all, I know when I'm building this, it's got to be top notch, because in my gaming circle, my regular opponents are top 5 national gamers. So I can't bring an army that's subpar. If I want to win, if I want to stand a chance of winning, I have to bring the best army. It's taking this into account, knowing my opponents are not only going to be adopting the best tactics possible, they've probably got down to a T the best builds for their armies. So, like I was mentioning earlier, when asking for advice on an army list and this and that and the next thing, is a difficult one, because it all depends on what you're facing. If you're facing a lot of flyers, then the advice would be take as much stuff as you can that's going to be anti-flyer. If you're not facing any flyers at all and you're facing against an orc horde every week, then the advice would be take as much anti-infantry weaponry as you can, and vice versa for if you're playing tanks a lot, or if you're playing army list A, B or C. The advice changes. However, what doesn't change is the components. Now, the components of a good army list, it's more complicated, more simple at the same time than saying, right, I need a unit that's good at shooting, I need a unit that's good in combat, I need a unit that can do this, a unit that can do that. It's a lot more simple than that, and it's a lot more complicated than that at the same time. Now, before I lose you and it starts getting confusing, I'll explain. When I build an army, I'm currently playing Tyranids. As you can see, there's a zone probe. Just getting a Rotten Flesh base cut on. So little update there, taking an update. When I'm building a Tyranid army, Tyranids don't cope well with the usual format of building an army, where you have Unit X does this job, Unit Y does this job. Tyranids don't do well for 2 reasons. A, the codex is a lot weaker than most of the codexes, and the units are very expensive compared to other codexes, and normally not as good. So the components I have to take into account, and the components that every codex should take into account, whether it's a very strong codex or not, is you need units that perform different roles on the tabletop. Now, what are these roles? This is the question. So the first role that needs to be fulfilled on the tabletop is objectives. Most of the missions in the new rulebook are objective based. So you need units that can claim and contest objectives. So you have to think to yourself, right, do I want aggressive objective takers, or do you want defensive objective takers? And the answer is you probably want both. Unless you're doing a very specific build, like I do with my Tyranids. Now what this means is, you're going to want a combination of troops, all heavy supports and fast attacks in the case of Big Guns Never Tire and the Scouring, but primarily your troops units. You're going to want a combination of maybe a unit that sits back and shoots, lays down supporting fire for the rest of your army while it's claiming an objective. Then you're probably going to want two or three, depending on which codex you play, because you know certain units are more expensive than others, and some codexes don't do well taking 4 troops choices. So 2 or 3, probably 2, troop units that can go midfield, claim objectives, and still be effective. Again, some codexes don't do this as well as others, whereas some do it very well. Now what this allows you to do is have a great deal of tabletop flexibility. It means you are probably guaranteed to sit on one objective. There's one victory point, and it will give you a chance to, if not claim the midfield objectives, definitely to contest them or to take out your opponent's scoring units and go for the draw. So that's one component you need to have. You need your objective takers. Then the second component that's needed in any competitive army, anywhere in the game, is you need a trouble causer. Now, a trouble causer is as simple as it sounds. It's a unit that's going to cause your opponent trouble and make them act or react in a different way than what they had planned. For me, my Tyranids at the moment, I currently have 2 trouble causers, and that is the Doom of Malantine and the Winged Hive Tyrant. Now, the reason why those 2 units work so well as trouble causers is simply of how scary they are. People are afraid of them. People know what the Doom of Malantine can do, and people see a flying Winged Hive Tyrant and they just get scared. Now the job of these types of units is, whilst your objective takers, your auxiliaries we could say, sliding around in the backfield, getting objectives, getting into their positions, what these units are doing is pinning back your opponent's units, stopping them from getting into midfield, disrupting their back lines, getting them off their objectives, and then tipping the battle into your favour from an early turn. And that's what the trouble causers do. Now, the third component is a generic component, but it's very army specific. And the third component is you have to take the units that excel in your codex. Whatever your codex is good at, you need to do it. For orcs, say an example, it's lots and lots of things on the board. You play orcs, you're going to be outnumbered. No matter what build an orc army takes, chances are they'll outnumber you. That's just what orcs do. So orcs have their, the shooter boys, let's say, or Gretchen to take their backfield objectives. Then they'll have their knob units, their bikers, battle wagons that are going forward, that are in your face, and then they'll have boy squads that just flood the board. For Tyranids, it's maybe things like Young Gene Stealers that pop out of terrain and assault. Maybe it's lots of big monstrous creatures like Trigons. For things like Space Marines, it's cheap firepower like the Predator, like the Thunderfire cannon. And it's this component that makes building a competitive army hard to do generically. It has to be built to your codex. So you have to take the generic components of things that can get objectives, so troops, kit them out for a specific role. So either they're the ones that go midfield, or they're the ones that sit back. Apart from maybe Space Marines, no troops can do both. You have to be equipped for either or, in my opinion. And the third component is to take what your codex excels at. You look through the pages, what can your army do extremely well that all other armies struggle at or just can't do, full stop. I'll reel off a quick few more examples. I don't want this video to go on too long. You look at maybe Necrons, you've got the Wraiths. Wraiths are amazing. No one else, no other army has a unit that is that good for the points cost that they are. 6 of them, I think it's 6. Yeah, 6 of them with whip coils comes in at less than 5 Thunderhammer Terminators, and they're so much better than Thunderhammer Terminators. It's unbelievable how much better they are. Necrons also, they're extremely cheap flyers. If you're doing Necrons and you're not doing flyer spam, you're probably not going to win as many games as someone that is spamming night sides. But I say spamming, 2 to 3 is probably enough. Something like Eldar, you need to spam the psychic powers. Their psychic powers is what makes Eldar the most, work as well as they possibly can. If you're not taking at least Eldrad or 2 normal seers, or Eldrad and a Farseer, you're tripping yourself up before you even pick up some dice. Let's look at Tau. Tau got amazing battle suits. Nothing else in the game can jump in and out of cover, jump out into line of sight, shoot you, then jump back out of your line of sight. And these are the things, this is what you need to be looking at. Find in your codex that one thing that is just going to be a pain in the neck for your opponent to deal with. You've got, let's see, you need those 2 components. The old hammer and anvil sort of analogy works here. You've got the anvil units that sit, grab objectives in your deployment zone. That gives you a guaranteed point. Then you have, your aggressors that go forward. I think of a few quick examples. Again, I don't know if it's going too long, but you've got things like Thunderhammer Terminate, Thunderhammerators. You have, Orc Knobs. You've got Tyranid Raveners, things that are fast and dish out the damage, that get forward as fast as possible and just lay down the hurt and ruin your opponent's battle plans. You need those 2 components, the anvil and the hammer. And then in between that, you need the speciality of your codex. And with those 3 components, should get you on the way to building a competitive army. And it is as simple as that. Too many times I see people putting together armies with, a unit that's going to shoot this, a unit that's going to deal with that, and it's an archaic way of building an army, in my opinion. It's too 4th edition. The game's evolved since then. The game's much more dynamic. Units need a specific purpose. The army needs to be dynamic, and the units need to be rigid, if that makes sense. By making rigid units for a certain purpose, it gives the entire army its dynamism. Dynamism? I'm sorry. So this is what we need to be thinking about. What can you make your army do that no one else can? And if you can get that down to a T, I guarantee that your army will be competitive. Now, I'm going to stop this video before it gets to 15 minutes. Videos I'm putting up lately have been far too long. I apologise. If there's any questions on this video, use the comment box, comment, subscribe. Going to be putting some more battle reports soon. Been moved house. As you can see by my public, that's a freshly plastered wall. So there's lots going on in my house at the moment. Most of it's all sorted now. I have just moved into a new gaming area as well, so I was getting to know the people around before I start whipping out the camera. No one likes an in-your-face guy with the camera, so I feel more, I think, necessarily I'm more comfortable. I think the people that I play against who are more comfortable with me getting the camera out now, so some more battle reports will be on the way soon. some cool paint videos coming. I'm working on a display board at the moment for Tyranids. That'll be coming soon. So yeah, there's some cool videos on the way, guys. Remember, comment, like, subscribe. It's greatly appreciated. Alright guys, I'm out.